All right, so welcome to the deep dive. And today we are diving into a world that I find fascinating. It's the work of Iranian filmmaker Abbas Kiarostami. But I'm really excited because we're also going to bring in two other filmmakers and see kind of where they overlap and where they diverge.
Absolutely. Yeah. And those filmmakers are Andrei Tarkovsky and Robert Bresson. And the idea is to see how these three giants of cinema, they all grapple with some of the big questions of reality and illusion and the search for meaning, but they do it in such distinct and fascinating ways.
Yeah, and hopefully for our listeners, this will be a way for them to see each of these filmmakers even more clearly because we're seeing them in relation to each other, right?
Exactly. And hopefully it will be a way to kind of unpack some of the big ideas that they're playing with.
Okay, so let's just dive right in. One of the things that I find so fascinating about Kiarostami is just how subtle he is.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you really have to lean in to his films. He's definitely not hitting you over the head with anything.
Yeah. He's a master of showing, not telling.
Yeah.
He really trusts his audience to kind of engage with the material and draw their own conclusions.
Yeah. Take Taste of Cherry, for example.
Hmm.
You have this man driving around and he's asking people for help with something. And it's pretty clear that what he's asking for help with is suicide.
Right. And that's never stated outright. It's all in the way he phrases his requests. The silences, the glances.
And the way Kiarostami shoots it too, right? Like those long takes of the landscape.
Exactly. The dusty roads, the rolling hills. It's almost like the environment itself is absorbing the weight of what's being discussed.
Or not discussed, right?
Right, exactly. And that's what I find so brilliant about it. It's in the absences that he creates this incredible presence.
Yeah. And speaking of presence, we have to talk about close-up, which I think takes this idea of blurring reality and performance to a whole other level.
Oh, absolutely. It's such a fascinating film because it's based on a true story, and it actually features the real people involved in the events reenacting what happened.
It's like he's deliberately messing with your head.
Yeah.
You're watching what feels like a documentary, but you're also acutely aware that it's a constructed narrative.
It makes you question what's real, not just within the film, but also in life itself. And then you have that scene where the filmmaker himself, Kiarostami, actually appears in the film and talks directly to the camera.
Oh, yeah, that's such a great scene.
Yeah.
It's like he's breaking the fourth wall and acknowledging the whole filmmaking process.
It's like he's saying, hey, I know, this is a film, but let's just go with it.
Exactly.
So if we were to kind of distill some of Kiarostami's key stylistic elements, what would you say are some of the things that really stand out?
Well, definitely his storytelling approach. It's very elliptical.
Elliptical, how so?
It often feels incomplete in a very deliberate way. Like he'll cut a scene short before it reaches a traditional resolution. And his endings are often very open-ended. They leave you wondering what happens next.
Right. It's like he's giving you just enough information to spark your imagination, and then he trusts you to fill in the blanks.
And then there's the way he casts his films, right? He very often uses non-professional actors.
Yes. And that really adds to this sense of authenticity, this blurring of documentary and fiction.
Right? It's like you're watching real people in real situations, even if there's a script involved.
And it brings this rawness to his films that you don't often see in more conventional filmmaking.
Yeah. And another thing I've noticed is that his framing can be really interesting. Like sometimes it feels almost accidental. Like a key action might happen just outside the edge of the frame.
Ah, yes, that's his use of the unfinished shot. And by doing that, he again forces you to become more active as a viewer.
You have to imagine what's happening beyond what you can see.
Exactly.
Okay, so now I want to shift gears a little bit and bring in Andrei Tarkovsky. So for those who don't know, Tarkovsky is kind of considered one of the masters of what you call transcendental cinema. Films that deal with spiritual or philosophical themes and often evoke this sense of the sublime or the ineffable. And I think there's some really interesting parallels between him and Kiarostami.
Oh, absolutely. Both filmmakers are really interested in exploring these big questions about existence and the meaning of life.
Yeah, and they both have this incredible sense of time in their films, though I'd say they approach it differently.
Yeah.
Tarkovsky is known for these really long, really slow takes.
Oh, yeah, he'll just hold a shot for what feels like forever, and it really forces you to slow down and kind of sink into the moment.
And Kiarostami's pacing is definitely slower than your average Hollywood film, but I think his patience is more evident in his observational style.
Right. He's willing to just sit back and observe the subtle nuances of human interaction, the small gestures, the fleeting expressions.
And nature plays such a huge role in both of their films. It's not just background scenery, it's almost like a character itself.
It's this living, breathing presence, and it often seems to mirror the inner lives of the characters.
Yeah, think of the wind in the trees, and both The Wind Will Carry Us and Stalker. This is constant presence that feels both unsettling and somehow comforting at the same time.
Right. And both filmmakers also really grapple with this sense of searching for meaning in what might initially seem like emptiness or even despair.
Yeah, the arduous journey to the zone in Tarkovsky's Stalker, or the engineer's equally ambiguous quest in The Wind Will Carry Us, both of those journeys, you're not quite sure where they're going or what the ultimate goal is.
Exactly, and that's part of what makes them so compelling.
But then when you look closer, you start to see these really striking differences emerge, right?
Yes, definitely.
I mean, Tarkovsky's films are often very dreamlike, almost mythical, and they're very often infused with religious symbolism.
Right, especially Orthodox Christian imagery. You see that in Andrei Rublev, The Mirror, Solaris even.
And Kiarostami avoids that kind of overt symbolism.
Yes, he does. His films feel much more grounded in the everyday.
Yeah, he seems to find the sacred in the mundane, like that simple act of a child trying to return his classmate's lost notebook in Where's the Friend's House.
Or the conversations that unfold in the car in Taste of Cherry.
Right. It's almost like Tarkovsky is looking upwards towards the heavens, and Kiarostami is finding the extraordinary right here on Earth, in the dirt, the wind, the unscripted pause.
Beautifully put. I like that a lot. Tarkovsky is reaching for the divine, and Kiarostami is finding it in the everyday.
Yeah. Okay, so I think it's time to bring in our third filmmaker, Robert Bresson.
Okay.
Bresson, he was really a master of minimalism.
Oh, yeah.
Stripping cinema down to its bare essentials.
And I think you can see a lot of parallels between his work and Kiarostami's.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for one thing, they both famously preferred using non-professional actors.
Right. Bresson even had a specific term for them. He called them models.
Models?
Yeah, he really wanted to eliminate any sense of theatrical performance. He was looking for something raw and unadorned. And both filmmakers really believed in this idea of subtraction over addition. Less is more.
Yeah, and you see that in the way they use sound, for example. Like Bresson in A Man Escaped. He creates this incredible tension through the very deliberate use of sound and by showing us so little visually.
Right, a lot of the action takes place off screen and you have to use your imagination to fill in the blanks.
And it's similar to what Kiarostami does in The Wind Will Carry Us. The central event, the thing that the engineer is waiting for, it actually happens off screen.
We never see it. We only hear about it afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's their shared attention to detail. I mean, Bresson, the way he focuses on hands and objects and pickpockets.
Oh, yeah, he's a master of that. A slight gesture of the hand can convey so much about a character's inner state.
Right, and you see echoes of that in Kiarostami's films too, like the way he focuses on car doors opening and closing, or the significance of a notebook, or those rearview mirrors.
Yeah, those rearview mirrors are really interesting. They're always reflecting both the inner and outer landscapes of the characters.
Okay, but here's where I see a really interesting divergence.
Okay, what's that?
I think Bresson's films, they often feel very austere, almost ascetic.
You're right. His characters often seem to be undergoing these very intense spiritual trials, kind of wrestling with their faith and their conscience.
Yeah, like in Diary of a Country Priest, that's a really good example.
Exactly.
And Kiarostami's films can deal with some really heavy themes too, but there's often this underlying warmth, this sense of human connection and even moments of humor.
Yeah, like in The Wind Will Carry Us, the engineer keeps bothering this old man in the village, and their interactions are actually quite funny.
Yeah, there's a lightness there that I don't always feel in Bresson's films.
And I think that gets to a really key difference in their worldviews. I mean, Bresson often seems to be saying that grace or transcendence comes through suffering and denial.
Yeah.
Whereas Kiarostami seems to be suggesting that you can find grace in the everyday, in the absurdity and tenderness of human interaction.
It's a much more optimistic perspective in a way, right?
I think so. It's like he's saying that life is hard, but it's also beautiful and funny and full of these little moments of connection that make it all worthwhile.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So I guess, as we start to kind of bring these comparisons together, it's clear that all three of these filmmakers are using the language of cinema to explore really profound ideas, but they're ultimately forging their own distinct paths, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you could summarize it this way. Tarkovsky's path is poetic and mythic. He's looking for truth in the realm of dreams, memories, symbols.
Yeah.
Bresson's path is ascetic and precisionist. He's finding truth in those bare gestures, the unadorned moments, captured with this incredible precision.
And Kiarostami.
I think Kiarostami's path is fundamentally humanist and playful. He's uncovering these profound truths in the unfinished moments, the inherent uncertainties, and the wonderfully ordinary aspects of our daily lives.
He has this genius for making the ordinary feel philosophical.
He does, like that car ride in Taste of Cherry. It becomes this meditation on life and death, on connection and isolation.
And that little lie about being a filmmaker in close-up, it ends up reflecting all these things about our own desires, our own performances, the whole relationship between reality and fantasy.
And I think it's really interesting how he brings together these elements that resonate with both Tarkovsky and Bresson. Like Tarkovsky, he really understands the power of time, allowing moments to breathe and unfold naturally.
Yeah.
And like Bresson, he sees the power in a single glance, a subtle gesture, the unspoken communication that happens between people. But through it all, his voice remains distinctly his own.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Abbas Kiarostami and his fascinating connections to Tarkovsky and Bresson, I just want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Oh, right.
I think it'd be really interesting to just take a moment to observe the world around you, really pay attention to the small details, the little moments that we often overlook.
I like that.
And just see what you discover.
Yeah.
Maybe if you look at the world through what we might call a Kiarostami lens, you'll start to see these layers of meaning that you never noticed before.
It's an invitation to slow down, to really see, and to appreciate the beauty and the mystery of the everyday.
Exactly.
And I think that's a really beautiful way to end our conversation.
I agree.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
And for our listeners, thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you.
Bye.